Today's video is sponsored by BetterHelp.com, and I've been with them for a long time. BetterHelp is an online platform where we found that you can effectively communicate with your therapist. Now, you begin by filling out a questionnaire, and then you'll be matched with a therapist within a couple of days. And if that match isn't ideal for you, you can certainly make an adjustment there. Now, you're going to be encouraged to journal, and also they have the availability for group therapy on a wide array of topics, and I really like that. So as the need exists, go ahead and take the necessary steps to get the help that you need. And just know that BetterHelp has a 4.5 rating on Trustpilot, so it indeed is a platform you can trust. There's a link below the video that will take you there. Hey Team Healthy, Gus and I welcome you to another of our episodes of Unbound. Now keep in mind, these are the episodes where I field questions and comments from you all, and then I am able to zero in on some of the particulars that you're dealing with, and it kind of helps you understand who some of your fellow viewers are and allows me to speak into the issues in a little bit more of a personal kind of dimension. Today, we're going to be talking about how you sometimes have to unlearn some of the wrong messages that were placed inside your mind and took you to a dark or negative kind of place. And I've got three illustrations here, some individuals who are, to their good credit, they're doing their best they can to get rid of some of the old messages that were there. And you're going to see that each one of them has its own unique little angle to it. And then I'm going to be talking about how you can take yourself into a better place based on your understanding of the things that went wrong from influencers from your past. Now, the first person writes in and says, "My mother, the narcissist, tried to get me to hate my stepfather, but I saw through that and didn't believe her lies. Then, when I became a mom, she tried to turn my eldest daughter against me. And it took my husband to tell her the truth to convince her that I'm not who she says I was." We're going to come back to that phrase just a minute ago, the convincing part. "Finally, I have peace and quiet, and no more. I have no more BS from her either. I had to ban her from the house. I won't allow that behavior here anymore. I've had enough of it all. The most ridiculous thing is she still tries to blame me for her bad ways." Okay, so we have a situation where you have an adult daughter now who's a mother of her own, and she's looking back on her own childhood, and the mother, for some strange reason, says, "Well, I need you to hate the same people I hate." Now, let's just pause right there. Who would do that? And I understand that we can have opinions and preferences and interpretations about things, and we're going to express those things inside our home. But when somebody wants you to hate the same people they hate, there's something very nefarious going on there. And I don't know the situation with respect to the stepfather, but this lady is saying that she didn't want me to like him. And if she had a positive relationship, unless there was something really awful about that stepfather that she just didn't, as a child, didn't know about, I think that's a reasonable thing for her to say, "Well, I wanted to have a good relationship with my stepfather." It's like, no, I don't want you to. And then to take it a little bit further, and this is what gets me is, well, now that she's a mother, it's like she turns her own granddaughter against her mother, her daughter. And the mother, her daughter. And I just find that to be despicable. And what we see is this is somebody who has a great deal of internal turmoil, the narcissistic mother, and she's wanting to put it onto her adult daughter. Now, she said, "My husband had to convince her that I'm not who she says I was." And no offense to the person that sent this in, but I don't think she was convinced. I understand what you're trying to say. When you have to ban someone from your house, and in your last phrase, she still tries to blame me for her problems. She's not convinced of anything about you. She's just a very poor and miserable kind of a person. The next writer writes in. It says, "My grandma shamed my grandpa when he drank. And it was a learned strategy that I unfortunately used as well." So apparently this fella is talking about how whenever somebody did something he didn't like, he'd shame them. He says, "Now I see that it's better to handle issues directly with each person in private and not talk about it to other people. I had to unlearn grandma's style. Now, I wanted to put this one in here because I so appreciate him saying, as an adult now, I can see that whether you have an opinion about grandpa's alcohol use or not, and let's say it was even inappropriate, you don't have to go into a shame thing. He says, I'd rather going to be the kind of person that sits down with that person in private and speaks directly about my concerns. So in other words, I'm not going to ignore convictions, or I'm not going to ignore personal communications, but I want to do so in such a way where it has the greater probability of being constructive. Good for you on that. But then right there, his last phrase, I had to unlearn grandma's style. We're going to get to that. And then a third person says, I was the scapegoated child in my narcissistic family. Eventually, I began to recognize the traits I had, all caps, HAD, I had to develop to survive. I hated how I was targeted. Now, as a 33-year-old man, I'm trying to be a better parent than my parents were. Trying to unlearn bad habits and narcissistic traits is a very hard and painful process, but my mom doesn't get to say I deserve to be beaten as a child. She was and is wrong. So here he was, a scapegoat, and apparently there was a lot of strong anger on the inside of his home. And his thing is, now that I'm a parent, I'm thinking, well, I suppose that I could do the same thing that was done to me as a child and just unload it on mine. And as he looks at his own little small child and sees himself in that child, which good for him because there's an empathy element there, he's come to the conclusion, so much of what I was exposed to early on was inappropriate. Now, I wonder how many of you could add your own unique version of what these three illustrations are. In my counseling office, it was filled with people who had similar stories to something like this. It's important for you to realize when you encounter that narcissistic individuals, whether it's inside the family or a marriage or beyond all of that, these individuals are attempting to brainwash you. And when I say brainwash, they want to strip you down of what might be considered normal by other individuals, and they want to fill you with their own propaganda. And that's such a, when you put it like that, it's just such a despicable kind of thing. One of the things that we want to do is we want to teach the child to think for themselves. For example, let's suppose that the mother is struggling with the stepfather, and then in this first illustration, and then you've got this daughter. Let's say she's a teenage daughter that doesn't seem to have the same kind of emotional reaction to him. Rather than saying, "Well, you need to understand he's a terrible person," would it be possible for that mother to say, I'm glad things are going well with him. We're struggling a little bit, but let's talk about how we can handle our emotional or our family conflicts in a very clean way. I'd like to help you out with that. Instead, all the mother does is she unloads her vitriol on her own daughter and then her granddaughter later on, to the point where she has to be banned from the house. Understand that when you have something of this nature, you're dealing with a very disturbed individual. And that's why it's so important for guys like me and others in my profession to help you understand this is what narcissism is. And I have so many different ways of looking at narcissism, but narcissism in one way can represent the dark side of the human personality. There are individuals who have not come to terms with the fact that they're hurting and they're struggling, and they need to come up with some coping mechanisms. But all they do instead is they think, well, if I've been hurt, I'm going to pass my hurt along to someone else. If I've had bad patterns that I've been pulled into, I'm going to pull others into the same bad patterns. And it can go generation after generation. I'm hoping also that you can recognize that every time you look back and see how angry you were or how shamed you were, that's a learning opportunity. And I'm hoping that, and guys like me, what we do, and this is why I have my courses and my webinars and my books and things like that. It's like, well, what is it that I believe about that anger and that shame that needs to be different? I talk about healthy anger. I talk about how shame does not have to be something that is debilitating, but it can be. But you can take a look at your flaws, or your mistakes, or just some of the difficulties that are in your life, and ask, what are my cleaner alternatives? We lost Gus on that one. And so I'm hoping you can become a student of emotional awareness. and look for better kinds of ways. And then specifically, I'm hoping that you can be particular as you learn to apply some of your better insights. As an example, let's suppose that you are an adult now and you think, yeah, there's this one person that I tend to argue with way too much and I get sucked in. Why is that? Then you go back and you think, well, we had a whole lot of arguing in my home, or I had a lot of difficulty with an ex that was very combative and confrontational. What would be my better alternatives in this next scenario with this person that I'm with now? And take your insights and take your historical struggles and then ask, how does this impact me right now in such a way where I can figure out what my cleaner alternatives are, and be very specific with yourself. And then one enormous thing that I'm hoping you can hold on to is the thought that says, if you did respond poorly to that narcissist years ago and when they were coming at you with all of this, and you look back and you think, well, I wasn't exactly an excellent kind of person myself. Don't be too condemning of yourself. And I've said this before: nobody responds well to abuse. And when you look back and think, well, I didn't respond well. Well, of course you didn't. It was abuse. Nobody says, well, I can deal with this. It's hard on that. And so be gentle on yourself, even as you acknowledge I did that wrong, but now I've got a much clearer understanding of what my alternatives are going to be, and then give yourself permission to go into that kind of space. So like that one person says, I had to unlearn grandma style. I'm hoping you can think, whenever I look back upon some of my experiences with an inappropriate person, I learned, I guess this is the way you treat people. But now, as I have deeper insight and more wisdom and more maturity, I can think, that was an inappropriate message. And I've got my own message. Learn to trust in yourself. Take the hurt and the frustration that you've experienced and then turn it into resolve. And then as that resolve says, I'm going to examine what was going on with that other person, so that for the purpose of me being a much cleaner alternative. That's when you know that you're in the right place. You're saying to yourself, I can do better. I want to get away from that individual's influence, and I want to establish a much, much different path. That's the whole goal that we have in therapy, and I'm hoping that's something that you can apply within your own personal life. Thank you to the people that wrote these in. I appreciate you opening up your heart and your experiences with us. That's why I call it Team Healthy. We're all in the same boat here together. Now listen, if you haven't already hit that subscribe button, I would encourage you to do so. And we'll keep more of these videos coming towards you. I also invite you to go to my website. It's an enormous website. It has a lot of material on there. And chief among them, I want you to look into my courses. We have courses on anger management, on boundaries called This Is Me. We have them on Ready, Set, Connect, what the healthy style of connecting looks like, as well as Free to Be, Finding Yourself Despite the Controllers. I also have 90-minute PowerPoint webinars that are on there, along with hundreds of articles and my books. So we have a lot of resources. And the reason I put them on there is because that's my profession. That's what I do. And I'm bringing my 40 plus years in the therapy office to you in these kind of ways. So take advantage of them as you can. I know that that many of you can look back and say, man, I had some influences that were not good. And I'm hoping that you can take that and say, therefore, I'm going to be a lifelong learner. I'm going to, as I examine those difficulties from the past, rather than wallowing in the anger or shame or the bitterness that could come along, I'm going to go ahead and springboard that into my own personal growth. That's what, none of us are immune to having bad experiences, but what separates from the healthy from the unhealthy is the person that says, I am going into a right place. I can do better. I hope that describes you, and my heart is with you the whole way as you go on to that path.